Hello lovely people of the internet, I am Panda from Panda Creates, and this week we are making a crackle effect. I'm going to show you how to do a crackle effect. Now, I have already gone ahead and spray painted the base of my bottle. I will go through that with you in a second, but I am doing a crackle effect that has glitter as the base, and then the glitter will show up through the crackle effect. I'm choosing to do it on an insulated drink bottle. My mum needs a new drink bottle. She's been using a plastic one all year this year, but with the weather starting to warm up now and her bottle being under her desk, I thought it might be nice to give her an insulated one so that her water stays cold all day, and come the afternoon she doesn't have that really yucky room temperature water to drink, as is the case with most plastic drink bottles. So I am making her an insulated drink bottle, and I thought I'd turn it into a crackle. Now, the end result of this bottle, by the time we get to the very end, the favourite flower for my mum is a gladioli. So I have found a really beautiful watercolour gladioli picture that I want to use for the crackle cup. And it's like this peachy colour, so I had to make up my own glitter as well, but this is the colour that's going to show up from underneath. So after to get to this point, the insulated drink bottle was stainless steel. I gave that a really good sanding down first, and then I spray painted the base white. When that was dry, I spray painted it this really nice dusty pink colour, because this was the only spray paint that I had that closely matched the glitter that I wanted to use. So now that that paint is dry, we're going to go ahead and do the first step, which is the glitter. Now, if you are doing a crackle cup and you're not using glitter, you're just using the colours of the paint from underneath, from this step you will skip the next step that I do with the glitter and the epoxy, and you will move straight onto the crackle method from this. So I will tell you now to skip forward, and then when I go through and edit the video at the end, I will put up down the bottom where you need to skip to hit the crackle effect. But for now, because we're doing a glitter base, I'm going to show you how to do a glitter base with Mod Podge. So we are going to, I've already got my Mod Podge. You can use any type of Mod Podge for this step. I am using the blue dishwasher safe one. I also like to use the red label, which is the gloss one. But any Mod Podge will work. So what we're going to do is cover the whole bottle in the Mod Podge, put the glitter on. When that has completely dry, we will move on to the next step. So we're going to start with this. I'll try and do it in a way where I remember to stay in frame. So I don't use, you can get a Mod Podge brush. Like Mod Podge does sell a brush. I try to use a nice decent one, and then I give it a really good rinse straight away. These are cheap, the cheap paint brush, one of the cheap paint brushes that you get in the sets from Kmart. Being a Mod Podge brush, even if you wash it really well, there is only a certain amount of times that you can use the brush before it's just too stiff to give you this really nice smooth finish to the Mod Podge. So I try to avoid using expensive paint brushes when working with Mod Podge. I think this is a set of about 8, and I only paid about $4 for them. So to me, that's cheap. But when applying Mod Podge to do the glitter, you do want it you don't want it like that, right? You want nice smooth strokes, because you want the glitter to go on nice and smooth as well. And if you don't have a smooth Mod Podge application from the get-go, you're going to end up with lumps and bumps and all kinds of stuff with your glitter application. So just taking the time to make sure, and I do have a little bit of clunky bits. Don't mind my turner in the background there. That noise was my turner throwing a tantrum. Just going to make sure that that is a really nice, smooth and even application of the Mod Podge. Okay. And now, because this is based similar colour, I shouldn't have to do more than one coat, but we'll see how we go. So starting from the bottom. And I have taped off my bottom. This is all stainless steel under here, just because I don't want her to knock it against the table or something and possibly crack it. So because of the environment that she works in, I thought putting a bit of a bumper on the bottom would be the best way to go about it. Which is why I'm not glittering all the way to the base. So this is a mix that I made up of a super fine, well, it wasn't super fine, it was a fine coral coloured glitter that I mixed a lighter coral rainbow into, and the lighter coral was a 1mm cut instead of being a super fine glitter or an ultra fine glitter, to give me that really pretty base. So I mix colours all the time to make my own mixes, and then I put them in little containers and save them for another time. So if you ever need a glitter colour that you don't already have, try and make your own custom mixes. You don't need a lot. I mean, if you're only using it once, you don't need a lot made up. And you can always use them later for your keychain molds or anything like that if you do have any left over. I made up, once I knew that the match was going to be good, I made up probably a little bit more than I will need, or a lot more than I will need for this project, simply because it is so pretty. I know that I can use it again. But if you are, especially coming up to Christmas, trying to save some money, instead of buying a glitter that you need, try making up your own custom mixes. It is a lot of fun. I only make up the tiniest little bit first, so if it doesn't turn out the way that I thought it would, I haven't wasted heaps of the glitters that go into the mix. But once I know I'm onto a good thing, I usually do go out and make some more. Right, so just going to give this a quick tap to tap off any excess. Otherwise, I'll turn it this way so it is in frame. There is the glitter base for our Crackle drink bottle. So from here, I'm going to let this completely dry now. Once this is completely dry, I will spray seal it with Rust-Oleum 2x clear. At the moment, I'm using satin. And once that's dry, I will be back and we will put a coat of epoxy over this. Using glitter, if I was to do the Crackle method straight over the top of this, it wouldn't be smooth enough to get like a really nice crackle effect, which is why I am going to put a layer of epoxy between the glitter and the crackle effect. As I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, if you are going for a look where it's just the crackle over base spray paint, you don't need to do any of this, and you don't need the next step either. I will see you, if you're only interested in knowing how to do the crackle effect, I will see you when we start that. Otherwise, I will be back and we will do the epoxy. Alright guys, we are back. Our Mod Podge has dried and our glitter is dry. We are now ready for the epoxy step. I have already gone ahead and mixed up my epoxy. I am using art resin for this coat. Art resin is a 1-to-1 food safe resin. So I've already gone ahead and mixed up 20 mils in total, which is 10 mil of part A and 10 mil of part B. I'm going to go ahead and put the epoxy on this. Once it's been epoxied, I will remove the tape from the top and the bottom, and then we will be back to do the crackle effect. So I do want quite a thick coat of resin on this drink bottle. I'm hoping I can get away with doing just the one coat, but depending on how thirsty this glitter is, it may need a second coat. We shall see how we go. But we do need this layer super smooth before we attempt the crackle. Just because if you have a rough surface that you're trying to put the crackle over, which is why a lot of people just do like the crackle over a spray paint base, any kind of bump or imperfection in the layer that you are crackling over is going to make getting that crackle effect, which you'll see why when we do it in the next step, going to make getting that crackle effect just that little bit harder. You do need, in my opinion, a completely smooth surface. So I'm just going around and making sure that there's resin on all parts of my bottle before I go through and pour the rest of this epoxy on. Art resin is the same as a lot of covering resins. They will self-level. So as long as I can make sure that there is a little bit of epoxy on all the areas, when I pour this next bit on, as it spins around the turner, it should even itself out. So I'm going to do that now. Going to smooth out what I just put on, making sure I get all down here as well. There was a bare spot just there. There's that bare spot. Okay. Now I'm going to hit my epoxy with just a little bit of heat, just to pop any micro bubbles that we can't see because it's going over the glitter, and just to encourage it to level out a little bit more. Instead of it being so thick, it's just going to thin it out just that little bit so that it can move around the cup and level itself out and fill any gaps that may need to be filled. Always, when working with resin, especially if you're working with resin and you're applying heat to it, make sure you protect yourself. Safety goggles, gloves, and a half-face respirator that has interchangeable filters are definitely a must when working with resin, especially if you plan to work with it long term. So now that that is sorted and we've got our epoxy on, I'm going to let this spin, and then we will be back once it's cured to do the crackle method. And we are back, and we are ready for the crackle method. So if you have not put on the glitter base and you're just doing a crackle over spray paint, you can start watching from this point, because this is where I'm going to show you how to do the crackle. She has been, to get to this point, we have spray painted, we have glittered, and we have epoxied, and it is nice and smooth, and we are ready to do our crackle effect. So to do, I'm just going to put that there for 1 second while I talk to you. To do your crackle effect, and I prefer to do mine with a white top coat, just so I can put the water slides. I usually use water slides with a crackle effect. You can use printable vinyl or normal vinyl or anything as well. I just prefer to use white. So to get the crackle effect, it is the first step that you want to put on is some ordinary PVC school glue. And then while it is still wet, you want to put some white or whatever coloured acrylic paint over the glue. Okay, it is the paint over the glue, because the glue dries clear obviously, that gives you that crackle effect. So in my little container here I have PVC glue already. We are going to use my big brush. Load up with lots of glue. You do want the glue to be quite thick. I find the thinner the glue, the less crackle that you get. But you do want a nice smooth application. The whole way around the cup or the bottle. I like to work in nice even strokes. Trying to even it out here. You do have to work, well, if your weather is still quite warm or is starting to get quite warm, depending on where you live in the world, you do need to work quite quickly because you don't want your glue to dry before your paint is on, because we're actually going to hit it with a heat gun once the paint is on, and that is what causes the crackle. So you do need to work not so quick that you make a mistake, but quick enough that your glue isn't going to dry on you on one side of the cup while you're still working on the other. So as you can see, I am being quite generous with my application because I like really big, really noticeable crackles, especially when I'm doing a glitter base, because we really want to see that glitter come up from underneath again. This is just the last little section here. For bigger crackles, you use thicker glue. For tiny little crackles, don't put it on so thick. If you haven't done crackles before, just have a play. Do some areas that, as you'll see with this, because I am playing with it now, moving it around. Some areas you're going to want really big crackles on, some areas you don't. So just have a play around with different application methods. Find what works best for you. If you find that the PVC straight without watering down is a little bit too hard to work with, you can water it down a little bit. I would not water it down to where it's 50-50. The most I would do would be to water it down to a 2-to-1 ratio where you have 2 parts PVC. PVC? No, that's not right. Is it PVC glue? No, it's PVC pipe. I don't know what I'm talking about. The school glue, right? I do 2 parts school glue to 1 part water. Okay, so there is our full coverage. I'm just going to sit that there for 1 second just so I can quickly wipe down my brush, because I like to use the same brush. Okay, and now we're going to go in, move that out of the way, move this into frame. I made sure I didn't get them mucked up. Okay, so with your white paint, you want to make sure, I'm just loading up the brush, that you go in full sweeps. This is the part of the cup that you will see, so you want to make sure that your application is on point. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge with that neck, but nice, full, thick sweeps. Glue's starting to dry on me a little bit, so I do have to work a bit quicker. But as I go further around, jinx myself then, you see what I mean about really nice long strokes. Okay, I do have a couple of bumpy bits here that I'll smooth out. But it's that really smooth, long brush stroke that will get you that really nice crackle. Sorry about the background noise, my neighbours just come out. And my window is open because it is a warm day today. Almost done. Glue is drying a little bit. So I'm just trying to make sure I have all of my areas covered. This neck of the bottle's been a bit difficult too because of the curve and the way that it's got the tape on it, but it's okay. It's just that one spot that I can't. There we go. Beautiful. Okay. So once you have your full coverage with your paint, and I'll try and hold it up, see how they're really nice, even, or not even, they are nice long strokes. You will then, I'm just going to quickly move my cup of coffee out of the way because we all know what happens when I leave liquids laying around, especially if I'm trying to do a tutorial. This is the kind of heat gun that I use. It is very heavy duty. If you use a embossing gun, you can still do the same trick. I would not use a torch. In my experience, torches don't work, and I ended up just melting everything everywhere. But heat guns, embossing guns, hair dryers, all of those will work for this. And you want to hit, just going to turn it on and try and do it where you can see it crack. You want to heat it up to where that glue starts to dry under the paint. And you start to get here we go, your crackles. See them coming through? So there are some spots of the bottle, like this part is where I'll put her name. So I'm not going to hit it for as long with the heat. As soon as it starts to crack just that little bit, I'm going to move on. Because we don't want the crackle so much that it takes away from the design, where the design's going to go. But we do want it the rest of the way around the bottle so that you can get a really good crack. Crackle effect. Yes, I'm a grown woman and I have the sense of humor of a child. So hitting here again, as you can see the cracks coming through. The more that I hit the heat, the bigger the cracks get. So it really depends on the kind of look that you're going for as to how long you hit it with that heat. But as long as you have that really good, really thick base on it, you're going to get the effect that you're looking for every time. So I'm just going to go around quickly again, hit any spots that might need a little bit more. And that is crackle effect. Now if I hold that up a little bit more, see that beautiful glitter that's still coming through? Okay. So I'm going to let this completely dry. Some parts will continue to crack open while it dries. Otherwise, that's just about done now. And the next step will be water slides. So we will be back then, trying to keep in frame. There's the crackle. Now that we have our crackle effect, I left this overnight to completely dry. We are going to do our water slides now. I did have a little bit of assistance from my 9-year-old son getting this dried and on the rack yesterday after we recorded, and we had a bit of an oopsie against the wall. So if you're wondering why it has a really big bald spot, we hit the wall when he was putting it on the rack. He was a little bit upset about it. I told him that we're not going to mind. It's for his grandmother, so it being not a commission or an order, I'm not so worried that it's not perfect, but on the bright side, it does bring out that beautiful glitter layer, right? Now, my mum's favourite flowers are gladiolus, so I have made her this water slide. And then her name will go down the other side. So now that we've got a little bit of a bald spot, I think I might line the flower up that way so that the flower sits next to that big bald spot, and then that will give me enough room to sit her name on the other side of that big spot. Okay. So I'm going to try very hard to keep this all in frame so you can see how I apply my water slides. Depending on what I'm doing with water slide, this one is printed the right way round and will be the traditional method where you slide the paper out from underneath. If I am doing a full wrap water slide, I actually flip the image because it's a lot easier to apply the water slide like a temporary tattoo and take the backing paper off the top than it is to do a full slide from the bottom. So because these are smaller water slides, I have done them the right way around. If you are new to water slides or you do have trouble sliding them off the paper, I do recommend that you flip the image before printing, and then you can apply it like a temporary tattoo where the paper slides off the top. So that's a little tip and trick. I use room temperature water, and I have an inkjet printer, so I do have to seal my water slides a couple of times. I use Rust-Oleum 2 times clear to seal my water slides. So I'm soaking my water slide until I can start to move, right? So now that I know, if you can see, I'm lifting the water slide off the paper there, I know that that's ready. So we'll put that aside. Where did we say? We said this side, didn't we? I'm just going to apply a little bit of water just to give it something to stick to. And now doing this in a way where you can see as well. I did that on the wrong side. No, I didn't. Okay. I'm going to peel. No, we're just going to soak that for a little bit. One of the edges is sticky. Okay. So we're going to peel the water slide off the backing paper. There's still a couple of corners that want to be stubborn. And we're going to place our water slide on the cup without knocking everything over in the process. Patience is key. And making sure it all lays flat. I think I'm going to have to... There we go, that's better. Okay, now I use a silicone makeup brush or a mask brush just to push out very gently, because you don't want to ruin the paint and the crackle. Push out any water or air bubbles and push out any wrinkles. It is easier, I'll put my little water bucket here so you can see. It is easier having the brush wet because it makes it easier to slide over the top of the water slide without it catching. So I'm just going to go around all the edges and sides. We've got a really big air bubble here. And making sure that that's laying completely flat. So that's one side. We'll do her name up this section here. So again, we're going to soak our water slide. I made the mistake of cutting these out because I wasn't thinking I was doing a whole bunch of water slides at the one time. And I spray sealed everything else that I needed to spray seal, but I forgot to spray seal this. So when I was cutting them all up, I realized after I'd cut that I'd forgotten to spray these. That is why that last one, and possibly this one as well, was a little bit hard to get off around some of the sides. To make it easier for you when working with water slides, I do recommend you spray first and then you cut. With clear water slides, you do have a little bit more freedom. You can cut with scissors. You don't need to use your die cutting machine to do it. That wasn't too bad. Obviously, white water slide, if you're cutting out a design, it's going to have to go back through your machine with the registration marks to cut. So you're still going to, in my experience, seal first because it makes it easier for the paper to come off that backing sheet. But my recommendation, if you're going to be doing it a lot with white water slide, would be to buy a spare blade that you use only for cutting water slides, because after frequent use, the cutting through the spray seal can stuff your blades and blunt them. So if you're going to be working with white water slide a lot, definitely spend the money and invest in a blade that you're only going to use for that purpose. So doing the same again, just pushing out any air bubbles and any water that might be trapped underneath. It's a bit bumpy there because of the paint. Okay. So there's her name and her design with her gladiolis. I'm going to let this completely dry and then we'll be back for the very final step, which is just putting epoxy on the bottle. Hi guys, I'm back. I thought that I had hit the record button for this final coat of epoxy, but in the true tradition of me doing lives and tutorials, something went awry and I can't find the video file. So the epoxy is on. I used EX74, which is a 1:1 food safe, 1:1 ratio food safe resin. It does have a UV inhibitor in it, and it's the epoxy that I prefer to use for all of my top coats. EX74 is a little bit different to resins like Amazing Clear Cast or Art Resin. It does require you to double stir, which is why I wanted to video the final coat of epoxy for you. So I'm going to quickly explain what that means while you watch this pretty bottle turn. Double stirring is required for EX74, otherwise it doesn't cure properly. So if you are using a resin for the first time or you're a little bit unsure how to use it, make sure you always read the instructions, because it could be a little bit different to working with what you're used to working with. Double stirring basically means I use 20 ml for this drink bottle, so 10 ml of part A and 10 ml of part B. I mixed that up really carefully for 3 to 4 minutes. I then poured that entire mixture into a brand new mixing cup and continued to stir for another minute or so there, and then it was ready to use. So once I put that on and I made sure it was all smoothed out and put what was left in the cup on there just to make it a little bit thicker, I then hit it with a heat gun to kill any of the micro bubbles, and now I will let this spin and cure. Now if you notice, I did redo my tape on the top and the bottom, and I have moved, if you can see that little stainless steel, well, don't touch it, that stainless steel line there. I've been taping off at the same point this entire process because I didn't want any of the design, like I wanted it to all be level. But now that this is the final coat, I did move my tape down just that little bit of a smidge, because now that the epoxy is over that stainless steel on the tops and the bottom, it will create that really, really nice thick seal over the design, and I'm going to have less problems with it cracking or lifting or letting any water up underneath or anything like that, because you do have that extra room between the design and the final coat of epoxy. So once this finishes spinning and I can go and put it aside, I'm going to remove the tape in about half an hour, and then when it's finished I will leave it for, EX takes 3 days to cure, so 72 hours. So today's Thursday, so by say Monday next week, my mum will be able to use her drink bottle. Otherwise, that is our Crackle method. Once again, thank you so much for jumping on and watching my Crackle effect tutorial. I did not realise until yesterday that the tutorial that I put up last week, I said that it was safe for kids, and it was brought to my attention yesterday that saying that it is safe for children to watch means that it's it's available on kids' YouTube, but B, they turn all the commenting off, which I think is a bit silly. So that's been fixed now. So now in this tutorial, when I say to you, you are more than welcome to leave your questions, your comments, your criticisms in the comments. Also taking requests for any tutorials that you may like to see. You're actually going to be able to leave a comment this time. I've also fixed it on the other video that I did with the wood grain, so that you can comment there as well. So slight apology, I have learnt my lesson there. Otherwise, this is Panda from Panda Creates, and this is my Crackle drink bottle that we've made for my mum. Enjoy, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. It is always a pleasure, and I will see you next time. Bye!